Alrighty, hello everyone. I'm Paul,
And I'm Dave.
and we're gonna rank the at least major Nintendo franchises. David can't actually see the list, but that's fine. Um, so obviously we have our S rank, A rank, B, C, and F. I'll just call out the names and we'll argue about where they should go. I think these are
Really
vague.
noted.
They're pretty much in alphabetical order, I think. Anyway, first up is Advance Wars.
Ah, okay.
Where are you thinking for this one?
On the one hand, it's not too much of a particularly huge series with the couple games that they've had, but on whole, with how it's been a fairly popular series. At the very most, I place it somewhere around in the C to B's.
I'm thinking B. For the simple reason that S I look at as like those are the big franchises that are guaranteed to like sell consoles. A,
And
go ahead.
and in my mind, when you say Nintendo to someone, what's the first thing that they say
Exactly.
to you?
Yeah. No. Absolutely. A would be more of like it'll do well, but it probably won't be the reason somebody buys a console. And then B would be like the game that gets released and everybody is like, oh, that's kind of cool. So I feel like Advance Wars fits in that. Like, oh, that's kind of cool. I would buy that. So I think we're gonna
It
go.
kind of takes up a bit of concept from another particular series, Fire Emblem, not to spoil anything, but goes in a different sort of direction, but still has the same sort of play style in that sort of case.
Yeah, they're definitely similar. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, next up is Animal Crossing.
Oh boy, this one, as it sits now, this is probably sitting somewhat up in the A to S tier. In my case, it would probably be A.
Yeah, I think I would go A as well. I don't think, like you said, it's not something that I think if you say Nintendo to someone, I don't think they think Animal Crossing.
Well, it's one of those weird things now where with how the last couple of years have kind of gone, this series kind of exploded
Yeah,
with how many people gotten into the series and wanted to do that sort of stuff. But again, with how long this series is run, it's interesting to say that years back, this probably would have been somewhere either in D's to C's, and now it's jumped up to around A.
yeah. It the most recent one definitely got a big boost of just because of when it was released.
Hmm.
It got a huge benefit there. So we're gonna put it in A. We can always move it again later if we decide. So next up is Arms.
Again, it's one particular series that, with me actually playing through the game about as far as I can manage through it without going into additional content that's within the cartridge itself. The concept is interesting, but with what they tried to do with it and how they showed it off, it wasn't quite shown to the right audience or wasn't strong enough to stay within that audience. On the whole, I'd like to say that this would be a C series, but this is down somewhere in the D's.
So C or F. We don't have a D.
Okay. I wouldn't like to place it in F
Yeah, I don't
with
think it's
how
an
it fits,
F.
but
I think it's better. I think it's a C.
yeah, at the very most C or low C. Though it'd be interesting if they went back to the series and went with another one. Though, with how it performed, that may be a couple of years still.
Yeah, I feel like they'll probably give it another try in the future.
Hmm.
Next up is Bayonetta.
Oh, it's one of those cases of you really don't think of this series as part of Nintendo until you remember, oh, right, this series would have completely died if Nintendo didn't step in and be like, oh, hey, do you want a game about the Wii U? Um, and again, with just how it is, especially with the newest game releasing fairly soon, um, I'd say probably, yeah, it's maybe generous with B, like maybe low B to high C.
I would say B. I would say that it's a step above Arms because it is like it's maybe not a game that sells super well, but it's at least like a beloved franchise.
Mhm.
Like people really like Bayonetta if they've played it.
Yes.
but not a lot of people played Bayonetta. So next up,
Yeah.
we have Donkey Kong.
Ugh, it's tough with this one because you couldn't really have Mario without Donkey Kong. They essentially started out together,
It's
but
true.
then their series kind of devolved or diverged and went in different directions. And just with how
Dave, you there? You cut out on me. Uh oh.
was, I'd say
Oh,
they're
there you're
probably
back.
around in the B's, honestly, in my case. So,
Oh, really? B? I was thinking A for Donkey Kong because I feel like it's not necessarily a big seller, but it is a big part of like Nintendo's history, and I feel like the games are still well liked.
in most cases, but kids nowadays hardly even know anything about Donkey Kong. They think of him more as a Mario character than he is his own series.
Yeah, you make a strong point. Let's go with B. I can't argue with that. That's a good point. Okay, next up is Doctor Mario. Now this is just the Doctor Mario games, nothing else Mario.
Oh, this is a slippery slope there, Bad, with just how many particular series that Mario is part of. Um, I probably have to say C. Like, it's
Yeah,
one of those particular series that it's there, and if you enjoy it, it's definitely good. But honestly, with how many things people see Mario as, they most likely be surprised that you tell him that he has a PhD as a doctor, about as much of a doctor as he is within the game.
well, and also it's basically just Nintendo trying to make Tetris. Like,
Aside from actually
yeah,
working on a couple of Tetrises before.
yeah, it does. Like, it doesn't. It's, and I feel like we haven't had a Doctor Mario in a long time.
Like, I think the last recent one was a Dr. Luigi game.
Yeah, and I feel like it's kind of an abandoned, or not maybe not abandoned, but definitely not a high priority franchise. And it definitely, if you announce a Doctor Mario game, it's not going to sell any consoles.
Yeah.
Alrighty, next up, Fire Emblem.
This one has been interesting since it's been stuck in Japan for most of its run. And within there, it was a fairly popular series. Coming here with showing off a character within the Smash Brothers series and then getting one of their first games on the GameCube, there was interest, but it never really exploded. But then after it came out on the 3DS and there were the little changes they did, it absolutely exploded as a particular series within here. Though it's still a bit nichey within Nintendo's related series. At the very most, it would be high B to a low A for most cases with me.
See, I have a hard time because I've only played a few Fire Emblem games and I really like them. Um,
Okay.
I'm gonna put this in B for now, but we can reevaluate it later.
Hmm.
Next up is another one that's going to be a tricky one. It's FZero.
Oh God.
This is another.
Sadly, this is just going to have to sit in F because it was one of those particular series that was around and there for what it was, but with being a racer, only having a couple particular games to its name, and of course having to beat up with the monolith of the other big racer of the time now, there'd hardly be any sort of case for it to come back with how things are looking. There's a particular fan base for it, most definitely, but in most cases, most people would be like, "What's FZero?"
Yeah, I mean, you make a strong. I can't put it in F because I. The only reason I say not F is like I can't think of a bad FZero game. Right? Like
That's
the
definitely true.
the
For what
games
it
are all
does
good.
it well.
Yeah, like it's not a super big franchise, but at least it's not shit.
Mm,
Right? Like all the games are good and you'd have a good time playing them. So I'm going bottom of C.
mm.
So next up, Golden Sun.
Ooh, another case with this. With all the particular games that they've had, it definitely worked with all the concept of what they went for, how the gameplay worked, and all from there. But again, with only having about 3 to 4-ish
Yeah.
games, there hasn't really been that much of a franchise.
And it hasn't
I'm
been
being
around
as
since like the DS.
Game Boy Advance, I believe it was.
The third one I think was a DS game.
Yes, from there.
Yeah. But otherwise, after that, I don't think we got anything. So it's been a
Yeah, no,
while.
there hasn't been much more from there. Like being generous enough with C, but again, it's kind of one of those sleeper ones that I wouldn't be surprised be sitting in F.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it with C because again, for me, it's that FZero thing where it's maybe not a huge franchise, but the games are all good,
Hmm.
right? Like you wouldn't complain if you got a new Golden Sun game. You'd be like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Like those are at least fun.
Or for the fans of it being like, oh God,
Yeah,
they brought it back.
yeah, no, absolutely. So next up, this is another one that I feel like we're gonna rank really low, but arguably shouldn't be. Kid Icarus.
Oh, this is a particular one where you wouldn't have discovered it if the 3DS game didn't release when it did. This franchise started back in NES, back in the old days.
Yeah,
And again, they only got about as far as the Game Boy for any particular games. And it wasn't until the reveal of him within Smash Brothers when people were like, wait, who's this character?
yeah,
And then they brought the character out into his own game. And for what I played with it and the bit I know about it, it's amazing for what they've done with it. But there's only been that and maybe little bits and pieces that they've done with it. It's an amazing idea to go with, but with knowing Nintendo, if there's not a particular thing to really kick off the idea, I'm not too sure if the series is going to go much further than how it's had already.
yeah. Like you said, like it. They had the 3DS game. They had a game on the NES, and I think you said on the Game Boy as well. But
Hmm.
Kid Icarus is like a Smash Bros. Character at this point. Like, and there's nothing wrong with being in
It's
Smash
sad,
Bros.
but it's
But
pretty much the only
yeah,
real thing you know him from.
yeah. So this ooh, do we go F with Kid Icarus or do we go C?
Again, just with the amount of rankings that we have now, well, also with you, with the last couple series that you mentioned, most of them are kind of the one-hit wonders in most cases, so they would sit all right in F. But I think we're just being generous with sticking them in C.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue. So you're saying C for Kid Icarus?
Yeah, in most cases, there's at least something there. It's mostly the idea of who's going to come up with the idea that will really Kid Icarus up into something amazing from what it already is.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think we're on the same page here. Uh, th-
Mm.
oh, this is another. A lot of these are going to be real difficult. So
Yeah.
next up is Kirby.
Well, Kirby as it is always it's the safest bet in most cases.
Yeah,
Like,
Kirby's kind
I'm
of
not
always
sure with
around.
I'm not sure with you, but with the couple of games that have released now and just how he's gone on throughout his career, Kirby is one of the big faces of Nintendo, despite some people sort of being like, who's the piece of bubblegum?
Yeah, for me, Kirby is like a character that's kind of like every Nintendo console gets a Kirby game. Well, maybe not
And
quite everyone, but most of them.
I think another particular thing, spoiling it for people that don't know about it, but seeing from his creator and the director from his previous games, Masahiro Sakurai, actually discussing about him from his YouTube channel, he's one of the best introductions to video game with
Hmm.
his particular design and game philosophy.
Yeah, because they're made to be like very kid friendly. They're not super difficult. Like it's a good way to kind of teach you how games work.
And if you want that difficulty, you continue going through the game and it gives you more challenge,
Yeah,
or about as much challenge as the Kirby game offers.
yeah. It has a very good pace of increasing the difficulty, and even though like Kirby games, I would argue never get terribly difficult.
It wouldn't jump into the case of, oh man, this is starting to get Dark Souls.
No, but like even like Mario games usually have like a pretty big difficulty spike at some point Whereas I feel like
Hmm.
Kirby games kind of are very gradual and they never have that huge spike in difficulty.
Okay, I can see that.
So where are we putting Kirby?
I'd say with Kirby, he sits probably fairly well. I'd say maybe around in the A, maybe B if we wanted to shift it around.
We're gonna. I think we put Kirby in A for now, and then that again we can reevaluate later.
Hmm.
Next up, Luigi's Mansion.
Again, with this particular one, I just have to say C because it was
Really?
definitely interesting around the time that this was revealed. It's like, oh my gosh, Player 2 actually has his own series to work with. And with all the stuff that he's done with him now, it's been interesting, but he only kind of has 3 to 4 games to his name. So there's not really much there. And there hasn't been, much to my knowledge, that much of an explosion or much of a fan base behind him being like, we need another Luigi Mansion game.
I mean, there was enough to get a Switch game,
True.
and I feel like the Switch game did quite well. I feel like Luigi's Mansion should be a step above like FZero or Golden Sun. I feel like it's a B to me.
Okay. I can maybe see that.
You can see that. Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're moving on to Mario and Luigi. Now this is specifically like the RPG Mario and Luigi Superstars kind of series.
Yes, with those, which we're never going to get ever again.
Now I only played the first one of these, but I really liked it. But
Hmm.
that being said, I wouldn't have bought it if I didn't already have a Game Boy Advance.
Hmm. Again, it's one of those particular things. In my case, I didn't get into it until the third game, the Bowser's Inside Story,
Okay.
where that's the pinnacle of the series with how it all goes along. But again, just with the base concept of how the game works and all of its particular RPG concepts, it would definitely be interesting to see where they could go from there. But it's also a case of how this series has gone on and everything that's happened with the company that works with it. It would either have to start from step one again, or it would most likely be mishmashed into something, which they tried with another particular series that upsets me.
So for this one, I'm thinking B. I think it fits in with like a Luigi's Mansion.
Mm,
Because
yeah, I'd say you're right, though one other side of me says that this starts to drop down into C around with them, since it was popular for around the time it was there, but it was nothing super explosive. And especially with what happened to it now, there's probably not going to be much that they can do with it.
you want to put it at top of C, because I'm fine putting it top of C. I'm like,
Yeah, that would probably be the place I'd set it.
yeah, okay, let's go top of C then. Okay, so this one I feel like is an automatic S rank, but I guess we'll pretend that we're going to talk about it. Mario Kart.
Oh, geez. Like, aside from the base of it, yeah, this is it. Like, it's the case of the big Mario Kart game now is a re-release of a game that was released off of the previous console that's getting DLC.
Yeah, and like Mario Kart sells systems. Like,
This game has a mobile game for phones.
well, and like, how many people bought a Switch because of Mario Kart, or bought an N64 because of Mario Kart, or a GameCube because of Mario Kart? Like, I feel like a lot of people buy Nintendo consoles because they want to play Mario Kart.
Well, I think also the other particular thing with that is Nintendo on the whole has a bit more of a focus on multiplayer experiences.
Definitely. Yeah, like Sony doesn't really have a big multiplayer franchise, and neither does Xbox really. At least not
There
that I can
are
think of.
some within Xbox. Sony definitely kind of sticks a bit more to singular player experiences. It is more so Nintendo that focuses a bit more in the past with multiplayer. Now, more so is trying to get more so inclusive with a multitude of people.
Yeah, I've So I think we're both saying Mario Kart is S rank.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We're on the
There
same
is
page.
no question.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, this one I feel like I don't know if this is S or A, but it's Mario Party.
Mm, I'd probably say A. It's one of the other options for multiplayer experiences, but again, aside from the most recent one on the Switch, there have been a lot of ups and downs with the Mario Party series.
Yeah, that was going to be kind of my thing. Was like this. It's still a big franchise, but it's definitely dropped off in how big it is since like the N64 or GameCube.
Like, supposedly, again, from experiences from other people, the main peak of it was around in the N64 when 2 was released.
Yeah. I was
And
going to say
then
2 or 3.
around with those. And then it still stuck to the same formula, but was still around within the GameCube, which kept it relevant. But then after they went to the Switch and tried to keep with the system and keep its big functionality within it, it lost a lot of pace.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with putting it in A.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So next up, I feel like this is an immediate S rank as well. It's Super Mario, and for the sake of argument, we're going to include the platforming games as well as the sports games.
Okay, going that route.
Yeah, because there's no category. We don't have a logo for the sports games, so we're going to include them here.
Yeah, no. Whenever a sports game specifically comes out, it's kind of specifically Mario doing this sport.
Yeah. And we still
But
haven't
yeah,
got the game
again.
I want.
Oh,
I still want the Super Mario wrestling game.
that would most likely be a stretch. Like, I think at the most would be that one wrestling game that had Mario characters.
Wait, what? What was this?
I don't supposedly know, but I vaguely remember either seeing a Mario character within a wrestling ring fighting an actual living person or some other particular sort of thing. Again, my memory's hazy and not too sure, but I vaguely remember them doing something with a wrestling game with Mario characters.
Oh, I think I know what you're thinking of. They were doing the same company that made Strikers was going to make a volleyball game,
Oh.
but they were also going to include like a wrestling element to it. But it
Oh,
never came
gee.
out.
Mm. But no, on whole, anytime you speak of Mario, yeah, it's Nintendo.
Yeah.
Mario is Nintendo.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like that's anybody you mentioned video games, people think of Mario. Like they're synonymous.
Hmm.
So next up, Metroid.
It's another one of those particular series that it's not so much within the forefront, but if you're within the space of knowing that series, it is a big series where back in the past they had the typical platformers, the other particular adventures. That when Metroid first released, it was the first hardcore this video game is for teens and adults and for the adventure it did.
Yeah, and I mean like it's part of the it's obviously half of the reason that we have the term Metroidvania. Like
Mhm.
it's a big franchise. I would argue though, when was the last Metroid game we got that was a big deal? Like is it
Dread.
was Dread that big of a deal though? I feel
Well,
like
it
it
was
came and went
uh,
within like a couple of weeks.
reintroduced the series to the actual Switch with its first 2D adventure. Again, it's a case of there's a specific subsect of people that have played mostly the 3D Metroid games that were on the GameCube heading into the
Yeah. Now you cut out again there, Dave.
Wii, either
There.
the from the old series on the older consoles or uh, having the handheld experiences on Game Boy Advance and DS at around the time.
Yeah, to me it feels like it's a franchise that hasn't been like a big deal in a few years, but I don't know. What do you think? Are you thinking A or B for this?
Mm,
Because I don't feel like it's. I don't think it's on the same level as Mario.
definitely not. No. But if Mario was around in S, most likely, just with how it sits, I would stick Metroid within A, but I can also understand it sinking down a bit into B. Mostly it's the case of with Dread being released, there was that spark of it coming back, but I don't think it's really going to explode until Metroid Prime 4 is announced and ready for release, when people are going to be like, yeah, Metroid is back!
Yeah, I think I agree. I think we'll put it in A because I feel like it is the franchise that could explode again.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I'm happy with that. Next up, Mother. So for those of you who don't know, this
Oh, my
includes
mother.
Earthbound.
Yep, with this series.
This is a tricky one because the games are really good, but they don't do very well, especially in North America.
Uh, Definitely. And it was just kind of a case of either advertising was bad when it was first released, or there was so much competition at the time that it just couldn't get a foothold.
It
But
was
for what it is with the series, they're incredible with all the stuff that they do.
Yeah, no, they're great games. The other thing that really hurt the like Earthbound when it came out was for some reason they required them to sell it, I think with like the guide, so the game cost like an extra $20, which probably put a lot of people off
Ooh,
buying it.
ooh, terrible.
Yes, especially for a brand new franchise. So
Mhm.
Mother's a tricky one because if we're looking at quality, it's S or A. But we're kind of having to evaluate everything here. I think it's
Mhm.
a B.
Honestly, with how it's sitting, it's probably sitting around in C. Like, when was the last big Mother game supposedly going to be releasing? Like, at the very most, they've only put the Earthbound on the Switch for their
Yeah, yeah.
cloud gaming that they have.
Yeah. They did release the like cuz Earthbound is Mother 2. They did release Mother 1 on one of the virtual consoles. But yeah, we've
Hmm.
never even got Mother 3.
Nah, it's so true.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I'm going to say yeah, C is probably where it's going to have to go.
Hmm.
Unfortunately. Okay, next up, I feel like this is a franchise that's very a big deal for you more than me. Um, Paper Mario.
Paper Mario.
I remember the
It's
first
one of
one.
those particular series with what I grew up with,
Hmm.
and it was a bit of a case of the one particular game that doesn't want to be named, but so much involved with the series, it has to be mentioned of Mario and the Seven Stars off of the SNES, I believe it was, where
Yeah.
I believe it was Square at the time and Nintendo worked on getting the game released.
Yes. Yeah.
And then Paper Mario after that was Nintendo's solo answer to giving an actual RPG experience.
Yeah. And I remember like the first one being a lot of fun, but I never played any of them after that.
Hmm. It was a case of starting with the first one, it went more with its aesthetic and giving a beginner experience to an RPG using Mario.
Yeah.
And it was a decent enough adventure and gameplay enough that it went from there. Then when Thousand Year Door came into the picture, it upgraded on everything. And everyone preferred the game style and type from that. But then after that, Nintendo had a bit of an issue of trying to find a niche that it would fit into without doing the same thing that Thousand Year Door did again. Where if Nintendo can't find something else to do from the first game, they don't want to do it at all in most cases. So they went with Super Paper Mario, keeping the same sort of aesthetic but changing up the gameplay style. And then all the particular 3DS games. And then it started to devolve that it wasn't so much with the gameplay, but the aesthetic style of the game to essentially sell off of it. And that only took you so far.
Yeah. I feel like this is another. Where do we put this? Because I feel like the first, like you said, like the first game or two are really beloved, but after that, it kind of goes off a cliff.
Well, off a cliff and then climbs back out for a different reason.
Yeah, so you thinking like B for this one?
Low B to C, just as it is, because aside from its recent release that they had on the Switch, I wouldn't be surprised if they tried again with something different, but it definitely would not be the same RPG style that everyone and their grandma is asking for that Paper Mario has done in the past.
Yeah. Okay. Next up is a franchise I don't know how familiar you are with. It's a little franchise called Pikmin.
Ah, yes.
Now, this is another one where I'm like, game quality super high, but I don't know if it's a big franchise. Like, I love the games, but we haven't had a proper new Pikmin since the Wii.
Wii U, I believe, was when the last one was
Okay,
released.
so where are
But
we thinking for Pikmin?
again, it's one of those particular series that if there was going to be a new one, there's enough space that they can go off in the direction to make a new one.
Hmm.
From what I see with the series and whatnot, I think I'm being generous with it, but I think it sits in B. It's kind of starting to teeter a bit on the edge, heading into C, though.
Yeah, we'll put it at the bottom of B. Because I agree, like, I feel like if they released a new one, it would probably do really well, but I don't know if we'll ever get another one.
It's a bit tricky since it's somewhat of a decent enough franchise, but not enough to really push it up into the big echelon that most of the other ones sit at.
Yeah, I agree. So the next one, I'm S rank. It's Pokemon.
Yeah, Pokemon essentially could sit on its own as a different tier above S, just be Pokemon.
I mean, yeah, it could. I mean, it's Pokemon. It's the reason the Game Boy Color was successful.
Well, not only that, there's so many different aspects to Pokemon because I'm not sure how familiar you are with the particular community that sits with it, but there's so much discourse in some cases with Pokemon. I'm mildly surprised that it hasn't imploded on itself.
Yeah, I'm not. I'll be completely honest. I'm not really a Pokemon fan. Like I've played a few of the games, but it's just not really my jam. But
Hmm.
like I played Red. I played that game to death when I was a kid. I played like
Hmm.
Snap and Stadium, and from then on, rarely touched them.
Hmm. And it's one of those particular series, almost to an extent of Kirby, it is perfect for kids to get started with RPG mechanics
Yeah.
or turn-based battling and other sorts of stuff like that. And if my nephews are anything to go off of, they adore it.
Oh, it's yeah, because it's super easy to understand.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a very good entry franchise. Next up, we have Punch Out,
Ooh.
which is another like good games, but we haven't got one in forever.
Like the last one was around in the Wii. Again, with its concept and what it does, it's definitely an interesting franchise, but aside from just releasing games over and over and over again, there's not much of a particular hook, which Nintendo is one of the big issues with them for releasing typical games like that. Again, I'm just being generous, but I'd say C because they can most likely take it somewhere, but it's just the question of what could they really do with it.
I was gonna say F because I don't see a future for it.
Mm,
Because like
true.
other companies have done better boxing games, so you can't really you can't become like you can't make it and sell it as a boxing game because there are better boxing games out there, and you can't really sell it as a party game because it's only going to be two player. So I don't see what the future is there. And it like a single player, I'd rather play like one of the actual boxing games if I wanted a single player boxing experience.
Yeah, that's true. And I think the only other thing that Punch Out really has going for it is its iconic value. especially with what they had within the Wii version of it. They gave so much character and style to it, but it was only skin deep in most cases.
Yeah,
If they tried to push it even further, it would just probably wouldn't even be enough to really push the franchise enough.
yeah. So next up, we have Rhythm Heaven, which is a franchise I'm not familiar with.
Oh, okay. Again, it's a bit of a simple music style game, not quite to the extent of Dance Dance Revolution or anything like that, but still, case that you need to keep the button pressing and whatnot in time. It's definitely fun with its aspect of what sort of stuff you see the characters doing, but it pretty much just devolves to you push two buttons, sometimes together.
Okay. So what do we? I'm hearing C.
Not as it is C. I wouldn't be surprised if it could push up into B, because it goes off of its quirky aesthetic style alone and the music it uses.
Yeah. I just feel like the reason I'm saying C more than anything is I feel like rhythm games aren't really a thing anymore.
They're around, but it's a case of it's mostly devolved a lot into the VR style, Beat Saber, and other sorts of game styles there, where you use more of your motions to dance to the
Yeah, I feel like rhythm games had their thing like 15 years ago with like
music.
Guitar
That's
Hero
one
and
too.
Rock Band, and I feel, yeah, I
A
just
bit, a bit like that, but still, one of the big things with music games is one of the main selling points to it is the music itself.
yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so the next one I'm just gonna S rank right away because it's Super Smash Bros.
Yeah, just with how it is. The one sad thing that I have to say about it is just with the last release and everything that's been put into it, how do you go from there?
Yeah, I mean the thing is like with Smash Bros, like the minute they announce a character, it's a big deal. It doesn't matter who it is.
It at the time it was a stupidly big deal.
Yeah, yeah, no, I understand what you're meaning though. Like, where does it kind of go? But I mean, in all fairness, like, what's really changed between Melee and now? Like, in terms of gameplay, it's pretty much the same game in a lot of ways.
Pretty much, there's just been the occasional little fixes and a couple additional modes and other methods of play, but on whole, it is Nintendo's party brawler.
Yeah, it's probably their second biggest party game. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
behind like Mario Kart, but yeah,
Yep, yep.
huge franchise for them. Uh, Next up, this is a game I feel like I know is very important for you, a franchise, Splatoon.
Splatoon. It's been definitely interesting since I think aside from one or two other games, this is actually the first series that I've grown up with and seen
When did the first Splatoon come out? I feel like
sort
that.
of introduced the concept enough and going along with everyone being like, oh man, the online fighters going with particular things from there. Um, it was definitely interesting to see Nintendo's takes on the online shooter and going in those sort of competitionary sort of things. On whole, with me as a particular player, it's just a case of as long as there's the content and stuff to go through within a Splatoon game, it's so much fun and interesting with what they've gone with it. But after going through the story and collecting as much as you can with that, it mostly just devolves into the grind. And if you're not into the grind or have a group to keep yourself within it, there's not much else that can keep you hooked. But no matter
Well, goddamn.
works with it is
Goddamn, why do you keep cutting out? That's annoying. Go ahead, Dave.
yeah, I'm not yeah, I'm not too sure how much of the particular things came up, but to keep things shortened down a bit, uh, Again, I think I'm being a bit more realistic with it, but this is starting to push a bit more into B, but I wouldn't be surprised keeping it in C for Splatoon because it's building up from there. But again, with the third one just being released now and with them saying it's the end of this story, I'm not too sure how much further they can go without treading the same sort of water.
I'm thinking B because I feel like it's a step above like an FZero or a Mario and Luigi or one of those. I feel like it's on par with like an Advance Wars or like a Paper Mario or something. I feel like it fits nicely in there because it
Okay.
is like Nintendo's online game, really.
Hmm.
Yeah. So next up, we have Star Fox.
Ugh. In the
Again,
past, this probably would have sat up with the big echelon of things, probably sitting around where Metroid is as well.
yeah, I was
But
just gonna say, but recent, like last 10 years or so, it's kind of really fallen off.
yeah, they haven't really explored much, and anything they had put out, it's mostly the case of it's Star Fox 64 again.
Hmm. Or it controls like crap, and it's Star
That was
Fox
the case
64.
with it. The only case of showing that particular game off was adding that particular control to it. That and being on the Wii U with the
Well, and they had one on the DS, but you had to control it with like the stylus or something, and it was really terrible.
I can't see it really going anywhere else with it. Like the one offshoot with the GameCube release of Star Fox Adventure being more of a Zelda style adventure game.
Yeah,
I
that was
don't
fun.
really see the series kind of going off any other sort of direction aside from being a space shooter, and there's only so much you can do with that.
So where are we thinking? Are we thinking C or are we going F?
No, I'd say C because
C.
it's still one of those particular series that a particular amount of people would lose their minds if they got another game going.
Okay, now the next one isn't a franchise I'm familiar with. The legendary Starfy.
Fee.
Okay.
Yeah, it was fairly tiny. I think just one or two games on the DS.
Uh, DS. Oh, it's apparently there's 5 games, but I don't know how many
Uh,
came to North America.
yeah, that's kind of the
Only in Japan.
case.
Only yeah. Okay, only one came to North America.
Yeah, it's not super popular in our sort of case. I wouldn't be surprised with sticking this in F.
Yeah, and it's 2008, and we haven't got a game since F.
Mhm.
Okay. Next up, WarioWare. This is another one. Ask me like 15 years ago, this is an A rank. Now, yeah, it's more like C for me.
No, I definitely would agree because it's one of those cases of they tried to have Wario within its own kind of game, but it wasn't until these offshoots kind of came off that it was kind of like, oh, we might actually have something here. But then there's only so much that you can kind of go with the concept of just making quick little games that you can do within a couple of seconds.
Yeah, they were. It was like basically like a mini game collection where all the games could be played in like 5 seconds or less.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a cool concept, but they haven't really done anything with it in years. Next
Yeah.
up, Xenoblade Chronicles.
Ooh, this one has exploded a whole lot. Like the whole aspect of actually getting the first game to the States with all the work that they did. And again, just with how long it's been since I've actually played the first one, not playing the second, and just starting the third, this series is huge for what it's done on Nintendo systems, and even huger when you start diving into the whole mythology of the series.
So I'm hearing like an A rank from you. Would that be accurate? Because I've never played them, so I can't really speak to it.
Mm. Again, most likely people would slit my throat for saying, but I think it's sitting more around in B. They're huge enough series, but it's still kind of the case of I wouldn't be surprised that they could get these series onto any of the other systems away from Nintendo.
Okay. Yeah. I think B is not like it. B is not a bad company to be in. Also, like there's some pretty good stuff in there.
Hmm.
Okay, next up is Yoshi. Now, specifically,
Where
just the Yoshi games. Um, I'm thinking C because we haven't really. I mean, we get Yoshi games, but they're never like, you know.
it's like the one tiny little cute thing that they show off, and it's like, oh, adorable. Are you actually gonna get the game? No.
No, but I'll totally watch the video
Mm.
because the art style is super cool. But I'm always like, oh, like Yoshi's Woolly World, that looks super cool, but I'm not going to pay $80 to play it.
Hmm.
So
No, as
we're
it sits, then I don't really know how much further they can kind of go with the concept nowadays. Like there hasn't really been much outcry for any more Yoshi games, so
okay.
C as it sits, but I wouldn't be surprised with putting it down in F either.
Yeah, I think we go C because I feel like it's still a franchise that's alive and doing things.
Though
Um,
it's kind of a case of it mostly survives with the fact of being attached to Mario and being one of the characters that you usually see within the games.
yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. And the final one we have, I'll just pop right into S rank right away because it's The Legend of Zelda.
Zelda!
Yes, and I feel like if I don't put it in S rank, I will get murdered.
Not surprised, but Zelda is also kind of one of those series that has had its ups and downs, but it's also kind of a case of the Switch wouldn't exist without a Zelda.
Well, and I feel like every Nintendo console, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like every Nintendo console gets a big Zelda game.
Oh boy, the particular thing about the Zelda series and their consoles. I
Because
have
like
word.
the NES got one and two,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Super Nintendo got A Link to the Past,
Mm-hmm.
N64 had Ocarina of Time and Majora's
Majora's
Mask.
Mask.
GameCube got was it Twilight Princess?
Mm-hmm.
And
And the Wind Waker.
yes, that was the one I couldn't think of. We got what it got Twilight Princess as well because that was like a cross-gen game. Did it get another
Mm-hmm.
one?
With that, I think it was just kind of offshoots with the crossbow training and other little things. I think
Okay.
mostly it was just, oh no, Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword near the end of the Wii's life.
Okay, and then Wii U got what did Wii
More
U
of the
get?
HD ports that they did.
Right, and they got Breath of the Wild on Wii U, didn't they?
They did, and
Yeah,
then
okay.
they showed it off to the Switch. And
Yes.
that's the one particular thing I'm not particularly happy with. If you're going to make a Zelda Nintendo, keep it to its particular console. If you're going to make Breath of the Wild, make it for the Switch. Make it for the Switch. Don't have it on the Wii U and be like, oh, we'll just move it to the Switch to make it fancy.
I mean, I
Ugh.
understand why they did it because they wanted something big to launch the system because they didn't really have anything else.
It's completely understandable,
But yeah, I understand. Like a lot of people don't like the cross-gen stuff. All right, let's quickly go
but it's
through.
the second time they did it, and it leaves me niffed.
All right, let's go through our tiers and see if we want to move anything. So, uh,
Radios.
and I didn't put these in any particular order, so whatever. In
Radios.
S rank, we have Mario Kart, Super Mario, Pokemon, Smash Bros, and Zelda.
Yeah,
Are
that
we good
works.
with that? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, yes.
A rank, we have Animal Crossing, Kirby, Mario Party, and Metroid.
Yeah, that was good there.
Yeah. Okay. B, we have Advance Wars, Bayonetta, Donkey Kong, Fire Emblem, Luigi's Mansion, Paper Mario, Pikmin, Splatoon, Xenoblade Chronicles.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
works there.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy with all of these as well.
Hmm.
And in C, we have Mario and Luigi, Arms, Dr. Mario, FZero, Golden Sun, Kid Icarus, Mother, Rhythm Heaven, Star Fox, WarioWare, and Yoshi.
Honestly, with this particular tier, about half of the list could honestly be switched down a bit to F within my own sort of case. But the other side of me is the case of a couple of these particular characters are loved for the little bit that they've been in. It's most
what's one that you're kind of looking at and going that should probably be an F? I'm kind of interested.
Also, just in the series are evolved from where they are now, and yeah, but on whole, it's still a particular series that if you did mention it to a big Nintendo fan, they'd be like, "Oh man, I'd love to have a new game within this series."
Yeah, I feel like these are all like franchises that could, in theory, make a comeback.
Hmm.
Yeah, like there's none there that I would be like, I absolutely won't buy it. And finally, in F tier, we have Punch Out and the legendary Starfy or Starfy.
So with Punch Out again, we pretty much discussed about it, but there's not there much else that can really be done with it. And then, of course, there have been the other games with Starfy, but we've only received the one. So if we do get any more of them, neat. But it's kind of a case of who is this?
Well, and they haven't made a game since 2008, so I would call that at this point a dead franchise, and I don't think anybody's clamoring for it to come back.
Mm.
Yeah, so that was our little uh, tier ranking of the Nintendo franchises. I'm sure people will complain that we put FZero in C tier and not in S, because it's going to be some big
Yeah,
FZero fan who's going to be like, "What? That's the greatest game of franchise ever." And like, look, game quality, it would be a lot higher, but they don't
taking
fucking
all
sell
those
well.
factors into account,
Yeah,
that brings up issue.
yeah. This was a good time, Dave.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I guess that's going to be it for this time. I've been Paul.
and I'm Dave.